Says webinar is now streaming live on YouTube.
Great.
Right.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm Daniel Hernandez. I'm the project manager for the redevelopment of the Midtown District Santa Fe site. And tonight is a first of a series of 3 or 4, still to be determined, to meet the developer. They've been working really hard over the past few weeks since the vote that the governing body had on entering into an agreement with them to work with the city and the public to develop a development plan for the future of the Midtown site. So they're just embarking. They're gathering tons of information right now. They're just embarking on their efforts. And like I said, they're working hard. I'm speaking with them 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day as they set up their meetings and begin gathering information at this early phase of the project. So basically what we wanted to do tonight was to introduce the team initially, but I wanted to give a little bit of background about why we were so excited as a city to work with this team. Their name is Team Midtown Santa Fe, and we generally use just Team Midtown every day when we're talking on the telephone or having Zoom calls. They're headed by a firm called joint venture between KDC and Sienda, both very strong and interesting real estate and investment firms. They were exciting to us because they bring both national and regional capacity to develop a large site like Midtown over a series of years, which, as you can imagine, takes immense capacity, experience, and knowledge of how to manage a large-scale development like this. The other reason we were excited about them is because their team is 100% comprised of local businesses and developers that are part of Team Midtown. They're all from New Mexico and most of them from Santa Fe. And they also bring deep and local experience, knowledge, and commitment to planning and developing a place that is truly Santa Fe. So I know that there's a lot of clarity we wanted to build up around that we have an amazing amount of people who really know and practice their craft in Santa Fe, and they're on this team. The other exciting thing is the RFI was originally constructed to facilitate collaborations between businesses and developers and people who wanted to see a great Midtown district. So what we are excited about is that we understand that members of other teams, as well as businesses and organizations that responded to the RFI are interested in contacting Team Midtown because of their own personal commitment and sense of responsibility to the people of Santa Fe to creating a great Midtown district in the center of the city. So the good news is that we have a great team that has deep knowledge, deep experience, deep capacity, and also we're excited that their team is truly homegrown, grounded in Santa Fe. So what we're doing tonight is we're calling this Meet the Developer series, and it's the first step in a series that Team Midtown has taken to hear from you through your questions. And any good community organizer knows that the first step in public engagement is understanding the concerns, the priorities, and the aspirations through people's questions. So there will be a series of sessions, 3 or 4, like I said, and they'll be topic oriented, and we'll be listening for types of things you want to ask more about based on these initial general questions that we've been receiving from you over the past couple of weeks. People have been submitting questions on via email to a site called info@midtowndistrictsantafe.com, and you can continue to submit questions even now at that website and into the future. The development team will also be scheduling a series of subsequent meetings again in their information gathering phase. They'll be talking to city councilors, the mayor, city departments, the directors of those departments, many of them who already have had a lot of knowledge about Midtown, that will also bring their own perspectives so the developer understands a political and a technical and a social context for their work, again, in this early information gathering phase. The next thing that they want to do is once they meet with the district elected officials, the city councilors are open to the idea of them hosting district-based forums with the city councilors so that they get into the various districts in the city. And that will happen into the future, but they're putting that on their calendar of things that they're looking at doing with the in various neighborhoods throughout the district. And then the other thing that they're interested in doing is talking to industry leaders, particularly in the industries that people have said that they want to see at the Midtown District: arts and culture, housing, technology, film, higher education. So they'll be convening people who are in those industries to find out how their ideas about the future of Midtown as they're creating their initial ideas around the redevelopment of the Midtown District. The other thing I want to make clear too is that the city is in the process right now of finalizing an agreement with a community engagement team headed by the UNM Design and Planning Assistance Program. They will be our consultants to really focus on the community engagement element of creating any good development plan. Their first task, which will be to establish an advisory group, a community advisory group, to actually create the plan, help refine it as it's implemented, and to oversee its management and implementation. We want that community engagement plan, that public plan, to be community focused and community managed. So the UNM team will be helping us to do that. A core element of the public engagement plan will create opportunities and provide stipends for local organizations and community groups to facilitate events, so that that will be incorporated into the public engagement plan and also managed by the UNM Design and Planning Practice Program team. So I wanted to start there just to give you a little bit of background about where we are in this process. Again, this is very early. So this is Meet the Developer. It's more of an introduction. I will be facilitating questions. I'm going to maybe interrupt at times if the developers are going on too long in their answers. We want to try to get through as many questions as possible. But we're going to start with Meet the Developer. We're going to turn it over to James, who's going to show us some initial ideas that were part of their proposal. And then we'll go on to the Q&A part, the questions and answers part. So welcome. Thank you. Please stay tuned. There will be more, and I'll end the session around 7 o'clock so that we keep to our time commitments. But again, thank you for joining us this evening. James?
Hey, yeah, thanks, Daniel. Andrew, can you go back to the tile shot real quick? I want to make sure we get everybody, let everybody see who's on the team. Okay, thanks, everyone. And Bill, why don't you, will you introduce yourself real quickly? I think it'd be wise for the two of us, maybe three of us, Phil, to introduce ourselves. Just quick little who we are.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Guthrie. I'm with KDC Real Estate Development and Investments. I've been there for 25 years and out of the company's 30 years. My title is Senior Vice President of Land Development, which fits squarely with this approach. Strategically, our company will look for development opportunities and bring some of our lessons learned and expertise to a wonderful district similar to what we're talking about tonight. But KDC, real quickly, we're a national company. We've done work in 35 of 50 states. I've got a team of about 90 professionals, just a whole host of expertise that we bring to any given equation once we identify the plan of attack and the partners with whom we're working. But what we focus on now is, in the big picture, placemaking. You know, and we've all found ourselves asking ourselves where we want to spend time, and it's finding a special place. And so tonight, you're going to hear a little more from our team and our initial thought process and why we were so intrigued about this wonderful location in Santa Fe and this great opportunity. So that's a little something on KDC, and we'll share more.
Philip.
Thanks, James. My name's Philip Wise. I'm one of the founders and chairman of Sienda Partners. We've, over the last 20 years, have been a firm that's focused on urban redevelopment, historic preservation, affordable housing. We've had some great involvement in the city of Santa Fe through our ownership of the La Fonda Hotel, Las Campanas, El Rey, and a handful of other projects. So it's a real joy for us to be part of this team and to really leverage the relationships we've enjoyed for so many years in Santa Fe. And it's also a real joy because Bill and I have known each other and worked together on for-profit, nonprofit work for nearly 30 years. And James and I have gone back to probably 30 years as well, James, in our work, both for-profit and nonprofit affordable housing. So again, it's a real joy for Sienna to be part of this team, to work with my long-term friends and partners, Bill and James, and all the great relationships we've enjoyed in Santa Fe.
And I'm James Field. I'm a principal with Sienda Partners. I joined the firm in October of 2018 to focus on large public-private partnership redevelopment opportunities. Really excited about our opportunity here at Midtown. And it just keeps blossoming. First of all, I thought the property was just in a great spot, a tremendous opportunity to create a place that we could all be proud of, that could serve the community in a lot of ways. And then we looked at the team and we saw that we had a stellar team of local people involved, some of the strongest local organizations you could ever hope to work with. And so now I'm really getting excited because we actually get to talk about it. Because of the state procurement rules, everybody knows we had to be quiet. There were times that it was terrible. We just wanted to talk with everybody and have a meeting and start getting some input. And now we're free to do that. So what I'd like to start with is just everybody on Team Midtown that's got their camera on, say hi and wave. So I want you to see a face for the people that are part of Team Midtown. We have fallen into a working relationship here that's really special, and we're really looking forward to bringing the community into that working relationship. If you'd like to see a presentation that we put together for the City Council, you can go to teammidtown.com. There's about a 20-minute video where several of our partners talk a little bit about how they got involved in the site, came to our team, pulled us in, pulled in KDC and Sienda and helped us get this thing up and running. So I'd encourage you to go take a look at it. It was, and I'll thank Tim Castillo, who did a lot of work trying to get it from everybody gathering in video with their cell phone into something that looks presentable. So thanks a lot, Tim. So Andrew, how about we start with this? I kind of think it'd be wise to start with, we started with some of the concepts that were articulated in the planning guidelines, tried to put together some ideas about how that might fit together, a place to start talking with the community. So Andrew, if you'd walk everybody through that, I think it would be really great. Andrew, you're on mute.
Sorry, James. Technical glitch.
Okay.
So Philip, sorry, James, do you want to just reaffirm the team structure and I'll take it from here?
Sure. So here's a slide that's got it's got everybody listed in categories that would, we tried to group our team into some of the categories that were articulated in the planning guidelines. So you can see under education, we've got University of New Mexico, Santa Fe Community College and the Higher Education Center, and Santa Fe Art Institute. Housing is represented by HomeWise, Yes Housing, and Aberg Property Company. We say community, I think that a lot of these folks would fall into the community, but Christus St. Vincent's, YouthWorks, Live Arts Santa Fe, Entertainment, La Fonda on the Plaza, Pacifica Ventures, and then our consultant team, Sage Morris Green, Stantec, the Hogan Group, and Autotrove. Hopefully you recognize some of those folks when we did our little Brady Bunch wave.
Okay, so we were excited and remain excited about the opportunity that's presented by Santa Fe Midtown. But we also are humble enough to realize that we're not the first to think about this site, that the city, the community, and local consultants have spent an enormous amount of time really starting to articulate what matters to you. And we're also very sensitive to the fact that Santa Fe isn't like anywhere else, that it's not worthy of a cookie cutter approach. It really takes its culture and its art and its community very, very seriously. And so we respect that, and we are really excited that we have an opportunity to stand beside you to further put a little more meat to the bone, to understand how we can make some of your aspirations real. We also appreciate that this is an enormous opportunity. You can see from this heat map that Santa Fe Midtown really does sit at the heart of the Link District, and it is a huge opportunity within Santa Fe to create this Midtown community. This is the largest consolidated piece of land that can form a heart, not just to the Link community, but to the surrounding neighborhoods. And so how the community or this new community knits and enhances the amenity and the values that are able to bring this collective place to life is really important. And as a part of the journey, we also studied enormously the work that was commissioned by the city and was undertaken by local consultants to really try and shape a vision. So this is where we started. We didn't start from a blank sheet of paper. We started by trying to understand the expectations and aspirations, as well as the thoughtful guidance provided, through these local designs. And we tried to take a little bit of each. We saw by the questions, there's a lot of concern and interest around access and mobility. And we're equally interested in how we can solve tomorrow's challenges and problems today. A decade ago, we weren't contemplating connected autonomous vehicles, and yet here they are today, a reality. Earlier or mid last year, Dubai launched a fleet of taxi drones. And so, we need to be future-proof in the way that we are contemplating, the way that people move around. But most importantly, we need to be able to provide a safe, walkable community that is people-centric, that is well-connected to the adjacent community, not just through roads, but also through green space, and really finding a way to connect the middle school with the park, and finding ways for the high school and the elementary school to tie into this area. We're very committed to the idea of children being able to walk to school safely, walk to and from school. And so we're going to pay very careful attention to the mobility choices and work with you to understand how we can make this happen. Also, the fact that the community has a rich history, that it's not just, it's not a blank slate. It's recognizing that there are buildings and components of the site that really add to its story over time. And it's a really fascinating and interesting story. And Sage has been working with the brothers to really try and understand what the oral history might be around the site, how we can record that and tell that story through integrated urban art, but also bringing this wonderful stock of existing buildings to life. And we believe that it will add a richness to whatever it is that we can offer to complement it. But again, it's not just the buildings, it's the art, it's the stories, it's this amazing pieces of fabric that we can weave into the new community that ultimately can recognize the fact that it's part of a continuum. It's not all new, but it's a part of a story that will continue into the future. One of the really powerful things that I feel hugely excited about this project is understanding that it's not the built form necessarily that tells the story. It's not just the architecture or the planning that brings this to life, but it's the partners who bring real life uses into the site. The ability to bring healthcare and wellness, youth training, higher education, affordable housing, market rate housing and workforce housing, a film and television facility. And it's not just those components as a standalone, it's how they fit together. And we believe that we've got enough critical mass and commitment from partners who will work synergistically and symbiotically together to be able to create this remarkable place from a very early stage. And what we'll work hard with you, being able to envision, is what's the framework that we put in place to allow that to work. You can see there's a green network that we've envisaged here. And remember that this is just a starting point. This is not a plan by any means, but it was the first attempt to say, how can we knit this together? So the pedestrian scaled road network, the open space network, are really formative to how we can blend these partnerships in a really meaningful way. And then really shooting for the future and saying over time, how can this really reinforce and unlock the value that that sits within the values of this community. But also building from the values, as I say, we don't want to create a new plaza or a new La Fonda. We want to create and work with you to visualize what this next chapter means. But it has to be uniquely Santa Fe. So with that, James and Daniel, I'll turn the screen back over, and perhaps we can take your questions.
Sounds good. All right, Daniel, fire away.
All right, I'm gonna ask easy ones and more difficult, challenging ones that people have given to us. But I'm gonna start out with one that I actually started this conversation with this evening, and to try to clarify and clear it up. But the question is, why were out-of-town developers chosen for this project?
So
Yeah.
Daniel, I'll take a stab, and Bill, you can amplify it.
Perfect. Yeah.
If you look at our team, the vast majority of our team is from Santa Fe, and we've supplemented that team with people from Albuquerque or people from Denver or people from Dallas. We've got our team is overwhelmingly local Santa Fe, and not just local Santa Fe, but organizations and people that have a track record of producing great results right now. Bill, you want to add something to that?
I would just simply add, you can literally look at the number of people on the screen here. There's not 3 tiles and just a few folks wondering what might could happen. And the reality is what intrigued KDC was the folks that were already engaged, and at the risk of missing one of those folks, but it just goes from HEC to SFCC to UNM, to Christus St. Vincent, to the reality and the vitality of the movie opportunity, the Greer Garson Studios. The fact that the link overlay district was in place, I think, was what brought a lot of those people to the equation. And then you look at the strong interest from HomeWise and Yes Housing and Abird Property Company. It literally is these tiles that you see and probably 15 others on their respective teams that are going to start having some influence on the placemaking that we're talking about, and with the feedback from the city. So we would not be intrigued if all these other local commitments were not here. We're just here to help facilitate the grander vision in each of their respective plans for the property.
Thank you. There was something that you said that's actually related to an additional question. So the teams that the members of the team that are on the meeting this evening, you had mentioned though that that their teams, their sub-consultants and consultants, will you be primarily selecting or identifying local sub-consultants to be on your team?
Absolutely. And when you look at Stantec, and you heard Andrew Irvine give us a quick walkthrough from a planning standpoint, but it started with Carlos Ruiz and Stantec's footprint there locally, the strength that they've got in their Albuquerque office from a civil standpoint. And we, as a national developer, quickly knew that we had some incredible planning, master planning and international expertise at the Stantec level through the Denver office. And the people that they've brought just to the thought process has been incredibly encouraging. But when we start implementing as well, it's all about local contractors, local consultants, and buying things locally when we're talking about implementation.
So one of the ways that we introduced you this evening and the way you talked about yourself and your national experience, what other large scale developments has KDC Sienda completed in the past? And what lessons from those projects did you learn that could be applied to the redevelopment of Midtown Santa Fe?
You want to start that one?
Yeah, James, you go ahead and start on that front,
Okay.
please.
Okay, so I'll give you one example. We worked with the city of Orlando on a site that used to house the former Amway Arena just outside of downtown. It's about a 65-acre site. We started working with the city at the depths of the last downturn. And it was a very, it was a tricky job. The property sat in an African-American neighborhood that was historically the lowest income neighborhood in the community. We had a lot of work to do to try to create value for the city and not trample on the neighbors. You know, it was a process to work with the neighborhood and work with all of the partners to try to get a development off the ground that could meet the city's financial goals, but also give the community accessibility to some of the goodies that were going to get built there. And so we started out, there was a digital media center there. We were thinking that we would work with the University of Central Florida and the digital media center and try to attract a big employer. Didn't work out that way. We ended up having to change course and bring the university actually onto the property. What really made that work for the community was bringing the local community college in and putting a program together that created a pathway for kids that might not think they had access to higher education, where they could come into the community college, get trained up, get an associate's degree, get into the university and get a 4-year degree if they chose. It really helped make everybody feel like they had access to some of the good things that were happening at Creative Village. But maybe the biggest lesson I learned there is that you got to be flexible. Success in these deals very rarely looks like your first vision when you go into them. They take a long time. You have a whole lot of variables that you can't see when you go into the development process. And you need a big committed team, and you need to be flexible, and you got to be able to adjust when life throws you a curveball. When the governor vetoes the funding for a new campus for your education partner, you got to find a way to keep the wheels on while you put it back together. Bill, how about you?
Yeah, I would just offer, again, we've probably done 20 such large master planned environments. Of course, we'll do one-off developments for corporate America, but nationally, we've gone from 350 acres down to 8 acres. But it's all about the components of the neighborhood and getting things done at a local basis. Again, what was so remarkable here was walking into a conversation that we were asked to walk into with all of these partners who were raising their hands and saying, hey, we have interest. What form it takes and what velocity and pace and the scale of our respective developments is to be determined. But we see the opportunity here and how valuable it is. We're already in the community and we want to just expand our presence. So that's what was so intriguing. And the fact that the Link Overlay District, the city done so much work setting the table here, there's just a good infrastructure for making things happen.
I'm going to ask a question I'm going to put out a question that someone had submitted about. So you have great national experience. How do you create a district at this scale that doesn't feel like other districts around the country, but is unique to Santa Fe?
Well, I think that's where it starts is literally at the community level, you can definitely come in and create, and it's not something we've done before, but you can go to some place and it feels like Disneyland. There's no authenticity, and you realize real quickly that something's missing, and so it's really all about planning, which is an art. We're not a planner, we're not an architect, we're not a master planner. The retail can go so wrong, and the residential can go so wrong. But when you start with the team that's got the knowledge and boots on the ground in the local environment, and you start the planning with that conversation, it's starting tonight or started a week ago when we were able to get this opportunity to negotiate this path forward. It starts with feedback and creating a place that's authentic, and that's what's going to give it longevity and relevance too, from an economic standpoint, or it could be fast to fail.
Hey, Daniel, Sage, could you add a couple of words about the connections that our partners have in the community that will get us, kind of get us out there and get us listening to the right people? I know you've got some some good ideas there.
Sure. So, and Bill and James have both alluded to this already, but, and to answer sort of the question you're asking, Daniel, one of the benefits to us having had this already very local team is everyone has connections to different elements in the community and different community groups. So, you know, Christus St. Vincent is very well connected with a number of different community groups. YouthWorks is very connected with different community groups. And so our ability to work with these different groups, you know, what we're hoping to do is create something that is really, really unique to Santa Fe. So we're not trying to model, even though KDC and Sienda have really substantial experience, we're not trying to model this off of other districts. So some of the community things that we've had in mind are like different outreach programs that we want to try to do to bring in input, and different events that we want to hold. I don't want to get too much into the different events, James, unless you had a couple in mind, just because I think that we have so many options we can play with, and we really want to see sort of what the input is first before we start setting up these kinds of events.
We'll come back to a few more questions about both the physical fabric, which I think you're talking about the physical place that you're trying to create, but also the social place that you're talking about creating. We'll come back to some more questions about that. But there is one that is a little bit, it's a combination of both the social and the physical, which is affordable housing. The solicitation that the city issued had affordable housing as a priority. Another one was job creation. So I'm going to ask a series of questions right now. We'll just do them back to back. And I do want to tell everybody that we're going to most likely have a meet the developer on housing and housing affordability. But Midtown creates an opportunity for housing production. What are the plans for developing affordable housing at Midtown?
So Daniel, I'm going to call on one or two of our team members to answer that, but it started, our ideas started with a document the city produced, the Creating a Healthy Housing Spectrum. You know, it's been published. It, you know, had a lot of great information in it. So we started with that and tried to assemble a team that could address all the different components of the housing spectrum that was articulated in that document. I think maybe the person with the most experience in the local community in trying to figure out what's appropriate in a given place is Mike Lofton. I've seen Mike once. So Mike, are you if you're,
yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, could you, yeah, and he's been coaching us on how to think about narrowing the field down. We put the big blocks in place, and we've got to now figure out how those blocks fit together and what they look like. Could you talk about your approach?
Yeah, I think, HomeWise is involved in Aberg Properties, which people are familiar with in the projects that Peter Aberg's done in Santa Fe, and Yes Housing, which has done affordable rental housing throughout the whole state, like over 3,000 units. So I feel like it's a really good team. HomeWise is strong on the home ownership front. So I think our approach has been, we want a mix of affordable housing options, both rental and ownership housing. We'd like a mixed income approach, because we think that just makes stronger communities and more interesting places and create that diversity. And we also like mixed use, right? So to the degree that the housing can also be integrated into a building that also has other uses like retail or maybe a school or, a fitness club on the first floor, so that we're really hard to make this a walkable neighborhood, right? That it's not just rhetoric that it's about live, work, play, and learn. It's like you can do all those things, and not only can you do those things, you can walk to do those things, which we think increasingly more and more people are looking for that kind of lifestyle. And Santa Fe doesn't have, in my opinion, enough of that, right? South Capitol is a good walkable neighborhood and stuff, but there's just not, we'd like to do more of that mixed use. So I think what that means, I think we're all committed to maximizing the amount of affordable housing we can. Now, obviously there's financial constraints in what you can do. But our intent is to really have a really strong affordable component. And in mixed income buildings and neighborhoods, everybody is committed. Peter Aberg is, his intent is he'd really like to not do the, in rental housing in Santa Fe, you can do a fee in lieu of. His intent is to have it in the building, that there's actual units in the building which is good because that has not happened a lot in Santa Fe. So I think, there's just a lot of goodwill. And, then on Yes Housing, there's a lot of using low-income housing tax credit and 4% tax credits to do affordable housing, but they're also committed to integrate market rate units into those buildings, as HomeWise is committed to doing that mixed income. Another thing I'd say about the thing that's also really important about mixed income housing is the market rate housing is what helps pay for the affordability of the affordable housing. So we're all very good at cross subsidizing this, and if you don't do that, then you're going to need a really big pile of public money to subsidize the affordable housing. So we think a market-based approach where we are generating revenue from the market rate stuff that helps us create more affordable housing. We will get more affordable housing as a result of that, not less, right? So, what would you rather have? 30% of 2,000 units be affordable, or 100% of 100 units, right? And the math is pretty easy. So that's going to be a key driver of this, is making sure we get the right mix. One thing I would add to this, one thing I've learned at doing mixed use stuff that HomeWise has done recently, is sometimes the housing is also really important to help pay for commercial or retail uses that aren't as economically viable, right? So if you want a coffee shop in the neighborhood, that may not, the conventional wisdom used to be that commercial subsidizes housing. I think with the way retail is working now, that sometimes the housing is what's going to help make some of those other uses work. So again, that goes to our commitment to mixing up the uses and the incomes and creating, a community that's like you want to be in. Like, this is going to be a cool place.
So there is a question and two related questions, I think. So you're talking about production at the Midtown, but there's also a question on what kind of impact will the development have on home values that are in the direct vicinity around Midtown, positive and or negative, and how do we mitigate the unintended consequences?
Well, I think, this is a really important question, and I'm really glad you brought it up, because I think, look, if Midtown is successful and people are living there and working there and going to eat there and going to school there to learn a new skill, you would expect that it's going to have an increased property values in the surrounding neighborhoods and will affect those values. So what's important about that is, like, if it affects those in a way that people now are displaced because they can't afford to live in those neighborhoods anymore, that's going to be that's not a good outcome. So we're very committed to, I talked about this at the council meetings, like, we're talking about creating a home improvement loan fund targeted to the surrounding neighborhoods, a down payment assistance fund, because if we can increase home ownership there and help existing low-income homeowners keep their homes, that's good. If you own your own housing, you're less likely to be displaced. The other thing, though, is some of those residents live in rental housing, and I think we also need a strategy on how do we protect that rental housing in those surrounding neighborhoods so that it also stays affordable. So we're very committed to that and looking at the whole, and not just those neighborhoods. I think those neighborhoods are really important to be affected most, but I think these the whole city, though, is something that should benefit from this, right? So if there's good transportation corridors up to Rios and stuff and out Airport Road, people from Tierra Contenta and kids who go to Capitol High could also benefit from some of the amenities at Midtown. So there could be classes in film production and things like that UNM classes and community college classes. So I think we got to look at how it interacts with everybody income-wise and geographically in the city. Kind of problem we need to work on is, what's the connectivity across St. Michael's? That is not a hospitable street to walk across. So can we make that a more pedestrian street? So again, that we can facilitate that interaction between existing neighborhoods and Midtown, so it benefits those neighborhoods as well.
Thank you. That was really helpful and clearly insightful because of your experiences in Santa Fe. I'm reading through a lot of the questions, and I think you've answered a lot of the ones that I was going to pull up next. And it's clear that this team is going to be pushed hard to really think about the thoughtful affordable housing strategy to ensure that Santa Fe households who want to live and stay and be a part of the future Santa Fe are able to live there. So I'm sure this will not be the last time we engage in these conversations. So it's great to know that there's deep knowledge and experience in financing it and operating it and developing it. So it's wonderful to see. I'm going to jump because I see Becky Rowley and Tim Castillo on here. There's questions about education. As you probably all know, the city purchased the property to preserve higher education in Santa Fe and at the Midtown site. So there's a question about, will there be a strong presence of higher ed to create, higher education programs and that will lead to jobs in Santa Fe? And so it's a question generally about your higher education strategy for Midtown.
Becky, I'll let you go first.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So, when Santa Fe Community College was first visiting with Sage and with Bill and talking about becoming part of this project, we really looked at what we could do at this site for the community to create jobs. So that was kind of our primary focus. So I had a conversation with Lillian Montoya at Christa St. Vincent and asked her what their number one need was in terms of training for healthcare. So obviously they always need nurses, but the one specific thing that she mentioned to me was surgical technicians. So that's kind of, it's a shorter term program than nursing, but it's a very specific program. And it's also something that, has other implications for other healthcare providers throughout the community. So we'd like to start by offering that program and then also expand into film and partner with UNM. Santa Fe Community College has a very solid film program where we focus on below the line film production. And we'd like to be able to partner with UNM on that. And in fact, we've already had some conversations with Justin about being able to move some of our students into the studio and look at, where some of our classes would fit in and everything. And then we also have, we have an LPN program that we're offering right now as a dual credit program at Capitol High. And we'd like to be able to expand that to Santa Fe High School so that we would be creating more LPNs in the community. That's another job that we've been informed that we need to be able to produce more of in this particular realm. We thought that, LPNs were not, so much of a thing anymore, but Chris St. Vincent has actually asked us if we could train LPNs. So we're looking specifically at training LPNs for community need. So, I think, we see our niche in this location really in healthcare and film. But we're very poised to be able to do whatever we need to offer, other type of programs that really do fit the community need. But we know that these particular programs will address, job needs, promote the workforce in the area, and really, they can be a game changer for people, who decide to follow a career path in healthcare. And I'll mention too that, as part of our package or whatever, we have, I think it's about 160 dual credit film students right now. So we've already been building that pipeline with the high school that's right, kind of around the corner. And we'd like to be able to expand that more and being able to have, for those students to have access to the film studio that's right there and to be able to take those classes in that film studio without and be able to work on projects. Such an improvement over, I think we're doing a really great job now, but this is a totally different level for our students. And I think would be able to really help develop film crews in the area in a whole different way. So, that's really how we see ourselves starting, but everything has been as a result of community partners that we're already working with and talking about how we could expand on what we're doing right now or what else we could do in the space. And we really look forward to partnering with Tim and with UNM on what they want to do.
Tim?
Sure. And just like Becky said, I think we're super excited about the opportunity to partner with the community college and really with Justin's program in Pacifica Ventures and really thinking about opportunities for internships. And really our package was really focused on creative commerce and really trying to support the creatives in Santa Fe and in the region, and really looking at how we can leverage that for future opportunity for students, looking at things like art, design, film, cultural studies, things that really create new opportunity. I think that one of the great things that we see is opportunity to do research as well, and really starting to leverage, emergent technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, digital fabrication. There's great venue in themed environments in Meow Wolf, and being able to maybe create some kind of energy and opportunity for students to platform into professions like that. So, super excited about what this looks like for a collaborative environment for many sectors in Santa Fe.
And Daniel, I'd add one thing. If you think about the value add equation here, students are a tremendous catalyst for creating value and excitement in a neighborhood. I could take you around to several places where you can see a tremendous change when you were able to attract schools that bring the students bring the employers. It creates the kind of feel and the energy that you want on your street, and people are wanting to be there. And the student is a wonderful catalyst for making Midtown what everybody seems to think it could be. And that's part of what makes it very exciting. Yeah. And I extend it. I think it's much further. When Becky talks about reaching down to the high school, that's a big reach. You think about what Malin does with kids in a training program. We are hoping we could create this continuum of education that reaches into schools and to families that don't think they have access today, and show them a path where they could go to work at YouthWorks, and then maybe they get interested in going to SFCC, or maybe somebody comes in through the higher education center from another community. But if getting the education there is one thing, getting a continuum is another, and then building a place from that is really the end game that we're trying to facilitate.
I'm going to push, just because there's another question, but I think I can condense it into what I think that you guys are saying. Is this for Santa Fe residents, the education program and the lead into a career path? And yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Again, on the first trip to town, meeting with Becky Rowley and then Erica Campos and then Tim at UNM, not one meeting, but there's probably been 8. And from an economic development standpoint, which is another big desire and need for the city, the short story is employers are looking for qualified employees. And like James shares, and you just heard from Becky and Tim, if you can create this pipeline, and in fact, you can tool education to fit the specific employer's profile, it's a dream come true. And so from a commercial economic development standpoint, and whether we build a 100,000-foot office building or we end up building 400,000-foot projects with 2,000 jobs, that's huge. And the vitality that brings to the neighborhood, just speaks for itself again. I do want to add, when we look at the 65 acres we're kind of talking about here, we're really looking district wide, and we're hyper focused on the extra land, the land swapped opportunities, the joint venture opportunities with private landowners on St. Michael's and Cerrillos. It's much larger than these 65 acres that we, some might think we're talking about today.
Great. I'm going to go on to a different topic, but I do think it would be helpful for the developer team as part of your developer series to think about these connections between education and jobs. I think people are very interested in that because they want to see their kids stay in Santa Fe and thrive in Santa Fe. Yeah. So I think it'll be a
Uh-oh, Daniel just froze. Hey, Rich. Rich, you're on mute.
Well, I guess to the last question that Daniel put out about the jobs and how important the jobs are, we may as well take the opportunity, I guess, to talk about that a little bit while he comes back. And the way that happens when we talk about the film school and we talk about all the theaters and all the aspects of the arts that are going to go on that campus, we are looking at it as a whole. And we hope that as we create all those different avenues and all those possibilities, the jobs stay here. You get trained here, and you do also get to be able to work here. And that is the primary goal of one of the primary goals of this development. So hopefully that gave Daniel enough time to come back, or Rich to take over.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on mute. This is Rich Brown from the City of Santa Fe. I have a couple of live questions so Daniel gets back. I'm just going to read from the YouTube chat line. One is the question, it says, what is the considered fate of the Greer Garson Theater and not the studios?
So, Sage, I see you smiling.
Well, I'm surprised the question didn't come up sooner, really. So there are a number of connections in our group to the theater. I have friends who did shows there. I was involved with stuff there as one example. So we're very aware of how precious and treasured the Greer Garson Theater is. We are working with a number of theater groups local to Santa Fe. We're also working with a group called Save the Greer, which is I think they started as a Facebook group. They're a group of about 700 alumni who care very much. They put petitions out about saving the Greer. So we do have a plan for the Greer Garson. The building's not going anywhere. We're hoping to turn it into a much loved performance arts center. The name's not going to change. There's a lot of work that has to be done on the theater, understandably. So that's going to be a big part of moving forward, is figuring out the best way to get it back to running shape and get it beautiful again where it should be. And then we're going to start utilizing it as a performance arts center for Santa Fe, and also to, you know, hopefully bring shows in from other places as well, in addition to the local stuff.
Rich.
And Justin's been working with me on that a lot, so I don't know if he wants to add anything to that.
I think you covered it, but the key aspect here is we need to bring it back to life. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's going to be a lot of partnerships. And I think there's no reason that this wonderful theater can't become local, national visiting point for people who love theater. And that again is going to tie into educational purposes. We are talking to the, UNM, SFCC, again, as training, as well as all the other members of the theater community here. And there's huge excitement. So we're eager to get going on that.
Great. Another question I have here, I'm looking at the chat box. It's starting to heat up. It says, who is the KDC Sienda team member that will take the lead in the traffic impact analysis for the proposed development?
So Matt, is it you, or should I direct that to Andrew? Where should we go with traffic? And I hear they're on mute.
James, you want me to take that one? This is Scott.
Yeah, please do.
So we're part of the technical team, Stantec is, and we're local traffic engineers as well. As we work through the master plan for the site, which obviously per all of our discussion tonight has yet to be developed, that's part of what we're all going to be working on. We'll work on traffic management and mitigation solutions as well. The site is anticipated to accommodate multimodal ingress and egress, including public transportation, emergency response vehicles, biking and walking. All of those are anticipated to be a part of it. We plan to coordinate with the city, the New Mexico DOT, neighborhoods, and the public to develop the appropriate contribution of the development to the area's transportation network as it fits into this section of the city and the current land uses and traffic generation that are already taking place. We're on the team to help with that. Obviously, traffic generation is a function of the ultimate look of the land use, how that comes together. And that's going to be developed in phases over time, and how those phases impact the transportation network and vice versa is a part of what we'll work with the team on.
Hey, Mark, could you talk a little bit about how you'd expect us to go interact with the community to make sure we're listening before we start developing our plan?
Yeah, great question, and really key given all the focus on community input. We've been talking about it today with the planners at Stantec, and we really feel like helping develop whatever our program is, our communication plan. I think Daniel talked about that at the very beginning, that we're going to need to get together with the community to essentially talk about how we can effectively execute a plan. You know, what means of communication are going to be effective right now, especially with Zoom meetings being sort of the prevalent way to go. So we need to, first off, engage the public in putting together that plan and following it. And we talked about how do we get people really familiar with where we are right now. I use the term, you can't change it till you draw it. We have to have we already have developed a basic plan, which Andrew introduced before, but we need the feedback from the community on that on various topic areas. And there's going to be meetings organized around that. If we had the opportunity right now, we could do an open house and have a big meeting and have different booths where people could talk about different aspects of the project, whether it was the film studio or affordable housing or whatever it was. We can't do that right now. So we're trying to figure out a way we can have that kind of an open house to introduce the public to very specific elements of the plan and find a good way to get feedback on that. So that is maybe a kind of a broad overview, but that's what I'm thinking.
Great.
Daniel's back.
Daniel's back. Dan, you want to take over, or can I, want me to ask one more question, or?
Go ahead and ask one more question, and I'll take it back over.
Okay, I'll do one more YouTube chat. It says, what are local groups bringing YouthWorks, UNM, SFCC, Christus? Do they have funded to contribute to what they want out of the Midtown campus, and where's the money coming from?
So, Rich, I'm going to take a stab at the really high level, and then let my teammates address it. Part of what was attractive about this team is they have a demonstrated track record of successful operations, which means they know how to attract the funding they need to run. It's incrementally, you're probably going to have to figure out a way to help them get funded, and and everything's up in the air. I mean, there's no funding stream for anybody that's not subject to change in our current environment. But Milan, maybe you could take a crack at it, and see Erica. Maybe we could get a couple of our local folks to talk about their outlook on funding. Oh, Milan just went off camera.
Sure. Hi. Sorry. Yes. Well, YouthWorks is fully capable of raising money for new programs. We're very aggressive in the hunt for our dollars. We'll go after foundation money. We'll go after federal money. What we're doing, and the county has partnered with us now too during this COVID crisis. So our partnerships have expanded. The need is definitely clear for young people to get skills. The need is definitely clear to the foundations that engaging the young people in this community helps build that workforce and the economy. So if they're earning and learning, then they're spending, right, and giving back. So that's our stance, and I don't have any concern. I know right now we're in the weirdest place, twilight zone, trying to figure out how everything's going to shift and move forward. We are hiring people as we speak. So there isn't fear on our part that this is going to be difficult. It's just having good strategy. And we're already planning that strategy right now.
Mute. Erica, you're on mute. There.
I'm strategic planning for Christus St. Vincent, and so my job is to look 3 years ahead. And so we were already looking for where we need to make sure we're putting healthcare centers, given the population of Santa Fe. So we found the Midtown team in an existing search for where we need to locate primary care. And we would partner with the Santa Fe Community College and HomeWise and some of these partners, whether Midtown was available as the location to house those partnerships or not. So those are things that are in our plan regardless.
James, is there anyone else, or should we go to the next question?
I think we go to the next, I think if we go around the horn, we're going to find that everybody's pretty good at getting funding for what they do. That's why they're on the team. And that, Daniel, what I would add is, my experience coming out of downturns is that when stimulus money shows up, if you say we could work with the city to write an application for stimulus money, it would be much more powerful if you've got economic development, healthcare, education, housing, especially a mix of housing, and all of the different things that this team brings together. This team is the kind of team a grant writer loves, because you can write a very competitive grant application. And so individually, they're very good. Together, they're much more powerful. And we've seen it before, where when the stimulus money is available, if you can show a community working together, you can do very well sometimes. And so we're cautiously optimistic. If we need it, we could work together and put something together. It'd be hard to beat.
Great. Rich, do you want to do the next question? My computer's acting up and I'm nervous.
Sure. I'll do the live chat, and then you can go back to the list of pre-questions. It says, what lessons, both positive and negative, have Sienna learned from their current ventures in Santa Fe that will help them with Midtown?
So Philip, you want to take how about taking a crack at that from maybe from LaFonda's standpoint? I think you got a good perspective there, and you're on mute.
Happy to do it. LaFonda plays a very special role in the civic life of Santa Fe. And we've really tried to do our best to continue the tradition that has been set decades before. We've encouraged our employees to be very active in all the civic affairs. We've tried to be a host of a lot of important civic affairs, not just in providing room, board, meeting rooms, luncheons, but also contributing to Indian Market and those things. So part of trying to be aligned in the community is one of the real core parts of our DNA. And I think we've done a pretty good job. We can always do better. And that's been something important to the ownership group and to all the employees. And it also allows us to attract a higher quality of employee because of our civic connection. James, is that the
Yeah, Phil, I'd add one other thing too. There's only one plaza, and we're a part of it, and we are protective of the plaza. And I think if you do any business in Santa Fe for any length of time, you understand that you need to listen. Santa Fe is a community with people, full of people that have opinions, and those opinions matter, and you need to be engaged and listen.
And we're reminded probably at least once a month that we really don't own the hotel, and we're a good neighbor to the plaza. We're just a good steward of it. And I think that's the type of demands that are put on important civic assets. And we think that's the same kind of demands that should be put onto Midtown.
I think that's a good quote, Phil. The notion that a developer is a steward of land and resources such as this, and how you act that way throughout this, particularly during this planning process and implementation. So we'll hold you to that because this next question sort of deals with it. The UNM Design Planning Assistance Program is going to help structure the community, public engagement advisory group and the process itself. Information that's gathered through that process, obtained through that process, harvested through that process, how will the information be used that the public gives to you?
So let me take a stab, and then Tim may want to add on to this. We had an initial meeting. Our first challenge here is we've got city-sponsored events like this one where we want to go out and do our listening. We'll have our own schedule that we'll set up and we'll run, and then we'll have these partner-sponsored events where there will be a series of events. We got to make sure we don't step on each other, and that we put these things together in a coherent way. So we're giving the community opportunities, but not overburdening. We don't expect people to come to a meeting every other night. And so that's step number one. Step number two is we committed at the end of our first meeting to meet in 30 days and to share ideas and thoughts. I'm really excited about the work they're doing because it's aimed at the community and the stories and the history and the things that we need to know to ground our thinking on the district and the campus. And so I'm kind of hungry to hear some of those stories and to see how that might translate into art or different aspects of the ultimate plan for Midtown. And so we're going to be really careful to make sure that we're supportive of that process and that we listen to what comes out of it. And regular communication is probably the starting point for that. Tim, would you add anything to kind of summarize our meeting?
I would just say that we've been talking to the design planning assistance director, Michael Pride, who's actually a resident of Santa Fe, and working with local organizations like Little Globe and Santa Fe Art Institute as a way of forming a steering committee that will actually start to go out into the community and really getting a plan going in terms of how to listen to community members, really looking at a diversity of groups, being able to engage in different voices around the neighborhood and the business as well, and really being able to interface with the KDC team to be able to bring that data forward and hopefully have an influence in the way that the Midtown plan evolves.
So related to the Midtown plan, there's a few questions about sustainability. Sustainability was a major element within the solicitation, the RFEI that was submitted. This question says, is there a carbon neutral or carbon reduction or a net zero goal for the redevelopment?
So Andrew or Matt, I think I need one of you to help me articulate the process that we'll go through to get to the answer to that question. Because it's a process.
It is a process, James, and I think the key to it is really sort of assembling the community values to understand what's really important to you, and then I think it's important to step back and to not say that one size fits all. Like, is it LEED ND? It could be. Is it net zero energy? Is it net zero water? Is it net zero carbon? And we know that we've got all the tools and capabilities to do those. But I think stepping back and really understanding what is most important from the community level is super important. We've done a lot of work recently with healthy communities. Now, that may be the value or the metric that resonates most with the community. We've also worked with with the Happy City Labs, looking at happiness as a metric. It's a really important one. So if building community and sustaining community is really important from a community perspective, then we'll take that on and we'll look for creative solutions and ways to integrate that. I think what we're learning at the moment, particularly in this pandemic, is how important the environment is. And so taking Philip's words about stewardship is that we will look at our opportunities to be able to adopt green infrastructure means. Not only are they smart, but often they're more cost effective than putting a pipe in the ground, and really trying to achieve that balance in the tools that we can sort of bring to bear. So I think we're in an exciting time. We have a lot of technology that we can engage. We have a willing community to be able to sort of help us navigate this, but we're excited about the possibilities here.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it will become more and more important. I think the notion of healthy communities and its intersection with sustainability is a it'll be a fun dialogue to have during this time. The mayor and I received lots of questions about sustainability and our goals for there. And the city has a carbon goal too, so we'll be looking at that as well. There's a question though, also just about the environments and open space, and I think it may intersect with healthy communities as well. Person wants to know, are there plans for open space, for community gardens, play areas for kids and families to be together at some point in the future? But are there open spaces for public activity?
Matt, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, Matt, there we go.
Sure, I can respond to that. Let me get my video straight here. In the little plan Andrew showed at the beginning of this, there are lots of and a range of open and public spaces planned, from community gardens to active plazas to walkable streets. So we think the public realm is a critical portion, an aspect of a healthy community, and by all means, all of those components are endemic and already thought of in the plan.
And Sage, would you add a little bit more about, just having an open space is one thing, but having the community involved and how it's programmed is another. So Sage, would you talk a kind of high level about our thoughts about making sure we're not dictating to, but listening to before we decide how those things are laid out?
Sure. So as Matt mentioned, we have considered those spaces, and one of the things we have talked about is having a role that we're calling a community curator. And that would be someone who helps reach out to the public, helps us gather some of that input we're looking for on what kind of spaces are valued and needed by Santa Fe, and then becoming that bridge person so that we have a kind of ongoing incoming stream of information about what might be worthwhile. So we've talked about things like meditation parks or art parks and rooftop gardens, but a lot of what we do with that is going to be changed and evaluated by this public input that we're asking for. And those curators are going to be people who help organize that. In the meditative park, there's a Tai Chi class on Sunday mornings at 7, or in the art park, we're hosting, art events with sculptures that we've commissioned local artists to do. I know another question came in about whether or not we would work with previous artists and professors and students from the old campus, and the answer to that's yes. And that's going to be one of those areas that we allow for that kind of integration with those previous people.
Yeah, Daniel, my experience here is that the most successful parks are parks that somebody incubates, gets it off the ground and gets it built, and then the public actually takes it over and does the Friends of the Park type organization where if you look at it, here in Dallas, Clyde Warren Park is probably the most successful public park in the city, and it's got a local not-for-profit that runs the programming. That's it's responsive to what the community says they need. It's full all the time when it can be. In fact, it's been a problem once people started getting out after the stay-at-home orders. But to me, it's our job is to cultivate it, and then help cultivate a group that wants to take it over and be the steward for the longer haul. But we're trying to create an environment where there could be local people that want to be the friends of pick a park, and have an ability to really take it over and make it of the community, and not something that we don't want it to be Disneyland.
Yeah. Well, this is related to that. This is a question submitted. So, are you committed to Santa Fe style for the overall look of the campus? I'm smiling because it's a tough question, and do the best you can. The concept of Pike Place Market, pictured last week, is great for multi-use and walkability of services, neighborhood retail, but we do not need to look like every other redeveloped city in the United States. Contemporary can still look Santa Fe, not cookie cutter developer look. So how might you think about diverse architecture, but architecture that fits in Santa Fe?
Alexi, tailor-made.
Well, thank you so much, James, and thank you very much for the question too. I think what's important to realize and understand about this particular property is that, yes, it's located in the geographic center of Santa Fe, but it's really part of a continuum of our history. And I think there's a lot of great things to learn about the traditional building patterns and architecture of Santa Fe, but learn the deeper meaning and essence of them without necessarily copying them directly. So stepped building forms, plazas, colonnades, things like that could really inform the design, but be done in a way that's also forward thinking and maybe even a little bit futuristic in a way that is uniquely Santa Fe. And I think that is probably a shared goal of all the team members here that will be doing building projects on campus.
Yep, and Daniel, I'm just going to, boring and dull and practical. We're not dictating anything to any of our development partners. Mike's engaged a local firm to come up with a sort of high-level view of the product that he'd like to build here. It's really, really special. But we're gonna allow our development partners in this venture to work with local firms to come up with designs that are, well, first, I'd say we're going to try to work with the community to try to establish some guardrails around that design. We don't want a bunch of big glass buildings. That's just not Santa Fe. We'd like to have something that's Santa Fe new. And it's going to take a lot of work with the community to establish the guardrails. Then we'll hand it off to the partners and let them do their design work and make sure that it's consistent. But Mike, can you talk just a little bit about the firm you're working with there? Because I think they've done a really good job of kind of getting us into the ballpark.
Yeah, and I'll take the hit for the Pike's Place Market example in the paper. But the thing is, what I was not talking about its design. I was talking about it's
fabric.
It's the integration of mixed uses there is really cool. And when tourists and people go there and they see people throwing fish around and buy vegetables and stuff, and that's what people see. But if you really explore it, there's like childcare available, there's subsidized housing, there's people working there. So it's the mix of uses that makes that a really viable place. It wasn't a design thing. On design, and we're working with Mass Design, who has an office in Santa Fe and is on some designs, because this is a very different kind of housing type that we're proposing. And what we've come up with, and I actually gave a copy of that rendering to the Mexican too, but they ran the Pike's Place thing instead. But it's, and we're not invested in this is what it has to be, but we just wanted to get, like, how could we do a Santa Fe style building, but with a more contemporary, different kind of look, right? So it's still honoring the history of the place, but it's also thinking about how do we look to the future and do something different, which I think, good architecture, in my opinion, is always evolving, but it always honors the past. And so that's what we're working on. And I think looking for, I think Mass Design has been really responsive to the community and is very good at talking to people and trying to get a sense of this. So, and very iterative, right? They're willing to work with you, try some stuff, say, and that's not quite right. So, and I think this whole team is committed to that. We want to do something that honors Santa Fe, but also says, like, we're evolving too as a community. It's not just, it's easy to hit the repeat button. We don't want to just do that. We want to go beyond that.
So just building on that too, there is some architecture there that has some significance that was designed by a famous New Mexican architect, Philippe Register. Are you planning on preserving those buildings? They're treasures. They are absolutely treasures. And I'll answer that for the master developer team. In a prior life, I invested a lot in properties using the historic tax credit. And so I have some of the coolest buildings I've ever been involved with anyway are historic buildings. And so one of the first things I did was go try to figure out where would the historic tax credit come into play possibly. And, the Garson and the Legaretta buildings are clearly on the map.
And so we're, you know, we're thinking about that right now. It's, they need some love and attention. We'll be spending quite a bit of time with them. But, you know, I think that, you know, that's, like I said, I think they're treasures, and we're committed to find a way to save them, if, you know, save them and use them as best we can.
And there's a series of questions. I'll try to consolidate them. There's a series of questions related to their future use. For example, can the theater continue to show movies for families and to continue being able to have movies at the site? Will there be a library, and are there opportunities for other, you know, civic uses at the site? And are you going to explore those with the communities?
So Tim and Becky, I'm gonna throw the library question your direction, if that's okay. And you're on mute.
Sure. Becky, is it okay if I jump in real quick?
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. You know, the library is just it's a beautiful space, and it has a great opportunity, you know, in terms of the floor plates being quite wide open. And so we at UNM have been very interested in being able to create an incubator there that allows an opportunity of different things. STEM education is one thing that we're very looking forward to having there. And, you know, and really having a environment that allows collaboration to occur. So, you know, I think the library is a tremendous asset, and being able to divvy it up into different partners is something that I see as a great potential.
I would just add on to that, you know, if you're talking specifically in terms of, you know, will there be a library there? I know there have been conversations locally with the State Library, Santa Fe Public Library, Santa Fe Community College Library, and those library directors meet on kind of a regular basis. And so, you know, I think they are hoping that they can establish some sort of a presence, and they would like to have kind of a, I don't know if you call it like kind of like a dual mission library or something, where there would be a public library for sure, but then it would also have an academic mission too, so that it could support what, you know, what Tim is doing at UNM and what Santa Fe Community College is doing, and really, you know, fit the mission of the Midtown campus.
Can I add one more thing? I was talking to Justin yesterday, and we were talking about the library, and one that came to mind was actually Seattle Public Library, and I don't know if anybody's been there, but it's a beautiful library, and that it has a bunch of diverse programs in there that allow a very unique, you know, sort of environment to happen. And I think that in itself is maybe some of the potential that the current library on the Midtown campus holds.
It is a beautiful library. It's almost a community center, as well as a library. When do you expect to know what percentage of the 64-acre site would be assigned to the different uses that you're proposing? I guess the question is, at what point will you have a development plan that identifies a development program? Yeah, a program, building program.
So I'll take a stab at that real quick. It depends on how efficient we can be at marching through our community engagement process. You know, if it's, you know, like Mark was talking about, if we had an open house and we had people come and talk with us and big meeting, and we could cover a lot of topics all at once, and, you know, knock some of this out on a quicker time frame, that would be great. But in this, you know, we want to give people time. You got to advertise your meeting, you got to get it set up. You know, we're just going to have to get into our community engagement and see how long it takes and how efficiently we're able to capture information on our own, working with the city or working with our partners. You know, Daniel, it's a little, we've got an agreement that says we're going to try to get there in about a year. And that development framework should be taking shape. What do you think, Daniel? 6 months, 4 to 6 months, we should start to see that taking a little bit of shape and trying to define a little bit more clearly. But at this stage of the game, we're trying to make sure we know what's on the community's radar. You know, like the answer on traffic, we need to get out there and find out, okay, what's really important to you? The answer on sustainability, we need to start out up here at this very high level, and then start to boil it down a little bit and start trying to, it's like playing Tetris. You know, we've got a bunch of parts and pieces that we think we want to put on the site, but we've got to make sure they fit together carefully or we don't have enough room for them all. And so, and the community may tell you, hey, you need 2 or 3 more of those and 1 or 2 less of that. And so it's really how that goes. You think of it, layer building blocks out there, talk to the community, find out if they're the right building blocks. Then we'll find out if we've got the right numbers of each one of the building blocks, and then we'll have to work with the team and the community to try to fit them together. And I think that's the way the process ought to work. If we're really listening, we can't tell you when because we don't know what the challenge is yet.
Yeah, and I'd like to add one more thing. There was a question earlier about lessons learned. What have you learned over time on implementation? And as it relates to this question too, we've learned you have to have a flexible master plan because, as we've all kind of acknowledged, you really don't know what the future holds, but you do want to have a plan that answers questions as to, okay, what should happen here or where? What should happen next to, for example, the existing film studio, or what's appropriate to go next to the Legaretto buildings or the Folsom Library. But having that flexible master plan that can respond to market demands, capital opportunities, and velocity of these respective components so that it fills in nicely over time. That's that.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And just to reiterate, the agreement that the governing body voted on May 4th, the term is around a year minimum to be able to complete a lot of work with opportunities for extension. And there's also opportunities for extension because of COVID-19, so that we're taking into account as well. So we wanted to provide as much flexibility to get the work done that needed to get the work done, which includes the public participation in creating a development plan. Here's 2 challenging questions that I think we probably deal with in our own households every day, but as it applies to this project, how does the public know that KDC, Sienda, Midtown team, or Team Midtown, how do we know that you have the financial capacity to complete this project during such uncertain economic times?
So Bill, we're here today in the middle, not middle, but in the heat of it. And we're actually out gearing up what I would tell you is an expensive due diligence process. And if we thought we couldn't execute on that, we wouldn't have started it. And I can't predict the future in terms of the global economy, but we've done this before. We have a lot of experience working projects through a downturn, and we know how to make decisions that keep us in a position where we can pursue projects in a time like this. So Bill, would you add anything?
Well, I would just add the fact that quick snapshot that we showed of almost 500,000 square feet of existing buildings currently on site, we think 200 to 250,000 square feet of that are viable. And as the public probably knows, many of them are currently occupied with going concerns, on the film front, and there's a lot of expression of interest there. So there's vitality there already, and that's compelling to these other components, and the whole opportunity here. And again, I've shared before, while we are in crazy times right now with COVID-19, and a lot of the bond markets are just frozen, and the capital markets, we don't know when they're going to open up and what kind of product, is going to be able to be borrowed against. But what we have going for us here is the city of Santa Fe. The 3 most important things in real estate, kind of a bad joke, but it's location, location, location. We've got all that going for us here, along with the existing building stock. And it's always going to be compelling. But when this market opens up and the opportunities, the dominoes start to fall, is a question mark. But again, all these people talking to us tonight, you know, are still raising their hands and say, that's where we want to be. So the time will tell.
Yes, time will tell. Yeah, I'm going to jump back to affordable housing right now because this is a question I feel that Mike addressed in some ways. I think, James, you could probably do a good job at it too. I think we get this question a lot as people who involved in housing policy. If the need in the city is more affordable housing, why would there be a focus on mixed income housing and some at market rate? Seems like we have plenty of market rate housing between law enforcement, fire personnel, teachers, and hospital employees. Seems like you could fill the entire future housing arena from just that list.
So Daniel, I'm going to take a stab at it and then I'm going to pitch it over. But first of all, what the question describes is what we call the missing middle. You know, and if you look at the affordable housing business, the subsidies available for affordability get you down to very low incomes up to about 60% of area median income. That's a little techie term, but you know, there are a lot of public sector jobs that are above 60% of area median income. And so, but there's a big gap between, you know, the top affordable rent and a tax credit property and the bottom rent in a market rate property. And so there's, you know, you got to find ways to cross subsidize that. And it is probably the hottest topic in affordable housing. And I don't think that anybody anywhere has come up with a magic bullet to solve that problem. And so, you know, we're working with a team of housing producers that have a lot of experience, have a lot of ability to attract capital. And, you know, in talking with the community, if they tell us that's what's important to them, I'm sure we can come up with a solution. And Daniel, the other thing that I keep hearing a lot about is the housing for people most in need. And so, Chris, I was thinking that you might want to tell people a little bit about your experience working with people with special needs housing, and, you know, how you provide some support services around those. Because again, Chris is doing this every day.
Yeah, thanks. We've been doing this for 30 years, and one of the things we've learned is, first and foremost, you don't want to have just one strata of income in a complex of any kind. It's just not healthy for anybody. So what we've always done is taken from the lowest to up to 60 and 80% and mix that, and that allows us to have a good product that has the kind of financial mix that you're able to actually make a deal work. If you can't do that, the deal doesn't work. However, what it allows us to do is to take care of the most in need, those folks that are at 30% of AMI, as a for instance, and are able to house them in a facility, in a complex that is beautiful. There's no difference from that unit to the unit that's 80% of AMI. So the other thing it allows is not to begin to segregate people into groups, right? You want a good, healthy mix. And not only in terms of income, but in terms of what you are able to put there. Not only do we start at that 30% and go up, but we also build live work, because one thing we've learned during this COVID crisis is live work is a big deal. And so we design into our complexes live work spaces. So it's a real healthy mix. With that, we also, our model now is to take a piece adjacent to the complex and make that a commercial retail, because somebody mentioned it earlier. It's really the rooftops that makes the commercial work, not the other way around. That also helps subsidize the most in need in our apartments. So our 30 years of experience has taught us not to go so heavily into one end of the spectrum and ignore the rest of it, because it isn't healthy to the community itself, and it isn't healthy, and it's very difficult to make work financially. But that allows us also to do things like social service coordination. Many of our sites have social service providers and that we contract with or have agreements with, so that we're able to address the most in need services that for folks that are really needing that. In many of our sites, we also provide social coordinators ourselves. Very few developers will do that. We do that because that's part of our mission. Our whole mission is to develop healthy, whole communities. And that means a community that is respective of everyone's needs. And we're in our 30th year, even in this downturn. We've just broken ground in Phoenix. That project is going. We're already going into a round now in 2021 where we're already funded to do a project. We've been through so many ups and downs in our 30-year history. None of this really scares us. I think we have a really great team that is able to put together really complex projects. We're proud of those projects. You won't be able to tell our complexes from anything that surrounds it. And so our experience leads us to know that we can make great things happen and do it in a way that it's seamless and you're not able to tell it apart from anything that surrounds it.
Well, I think what I'm hearing from the team is that the approach in creating a mix of housing, not only in income levels, but of types, is important. But and I know that in the many emails, again, that the mayor and I received, that it's not just the income levels, but it's also the types. And we want to see affordability for families living in Santa Fe. And affordability means that full range of affordability, from a low income earner to a middle income earner to extremely low income earner. And we want to try to see that production happen at the Midtown site. But so this is part of, preserving culture, preserving communities and having them be a part of the future. This question says, what do you bring to the table in terms of your ability to develop a Midtown campus in a way that will include and benefit all cultural and socioeconomic demographics of Santa Fe? Is it just housing?
So Daniel, I've spent about 25 years working in underserved communities. And so, my experiences have taught me how to listen and how to respond if people bring up if they bring a concern to the table, you got to address it. It's not we have a team that's experienced. We have a great team of local people that are in touch with the community. And so it's not me and it's not Bill. We've both got a lot of experience keeping our ears open, but we have this team surrounds us with some of the best network into the community that we could ever hope to find.
So I'm just gonna interrupt real quick, because I think the question is a little different than that. I think the question is, so we talked about affordable housing and ways of preserving communities, meaning they continue living in Santa Fe. What about businesses? What about the arts and culture? Those uses and demographics of the city that we want to see preserve and be a part of the future of Midtown. How are you integrating those into your plan?
So,
James,
yeah.
If you don't mind, I'll step in to ask Daniel's question. Right now, what we're looking at with the film studios, film school, the Garson Theater itself, and the educational program is that continuity. We're also, as we've said already, looking at the sculptures on the campus. So there is an old professor, Rick Fisher, who was the sculpture interim chief of arts at the college at the time. And he has been working with the city prior to us, but we have been talking to him recently about overseeing the sculpture program again, and also starting up certain programs that outreach to local artists as well as national, as well as international artists. The same elements that we're looking at here as well with the theater and the film studios is not as separate entities. We're looking at a fluid motion that is all combined on the campus that ties into education, that ties into professional artists, that brings the type of energy and communication and then growth from these foundations that we'll create. There will be a place for them. There'll be a home for them with live arts and other artists. That from that, we think will be an astounding, as I said, foundation for all kinds of elements. There'll be a home, basically. No one's going to be orphaned. They're going to come in, and there will be places for them. And who knows what will be established from that.
So I'm going to push a little harder again on that.
Okay.
I think it's an interesting question because it's at the heart of Santa Fe, the culture and the history and the demographics.
Oh, no.
So in many development plans, one might see affordability for small businesses to be able to locate there because it creates some, opportunities for small businesses to thrive in our neighborhoods when they're often not able to stay. Same thing with arts groups who are displaced from urban places because they can't afford the rents anymore. Will there be opportunities for nonprofits to flourish as well as small businesses to flourish in Midtown District?
Yes. I can take a stab at that too. The answer to that is definitely yes. A lot of the groups we started with actually were nonprofit arts groups in Santa Fe. The Santa Fe Art Institute is one of the first groups that we spoke with, and Little Globe, and Jamie Blosser has a whole connection of nonprofits arts groups, which is where a lot of this team started actually. And some of our partners are nonprofits like YouthWorks, and that's part of the vision for this space, is that you're creating a community where your nonprofits and your smaller businesses and your bigger businesses are not just good neighbors, but they're good collaborators. So they're actually working to support each other and help drive each other. And everyone that we've spoken to so far has been really lovely about wanting to work on that and wanting to engender those kinds of relationships and see that flourish. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that here. And I think it's another one of those places where public input is going to be really vital as we move forward, but also that strength of partnership and that willingness to work together is going to be really crucial to the vitality of those connections.
And I'll kind of bring it to a spot. We've talked about the buildings that we'd like to keep, that we think are viable and useful and additive to the overall campus. And some of those will have space dedicated to local arts, local small business, local people that are probably not going to go into the next big new development down the street. We'd like to make sure we have a place for people. Daniel, I wasn't quite sure where you're going with that when you first asked it, but yeah, we've been thinking a lot about how to create a space for people that bring the authentic culture and history to the site. And that's another reason that the history, I think Alexi hit the nail on the head. I was driving down Cerrillos Road one day and I thought, this is sort of like rings in a tree. You can see where the edge of town used to be. If you pay attention to the way the land uses are laid out, and within each of those rings of the tree is a story. And in a group of small businesses, some of them have probably moved once, twice, 3, 4 times, or been leapfrogged. But I think our goal is to try to make this a place where you can have a little bit of the new, old, and have everybody working together.
Good. I knew that you guys were thinking about it. I just couldn't figure out the question to get it out. Because I thought that whoever that person that has that question really kind of hits home on affordability for both the people's household as well as businesses and nonprofits. And it's a strategy that we have to consider and implement. And so.
Well, and an incubator, I think in any community like this, if you can find some way to have incubators, that's a good thing. It's one of the things that really excited me about the UNM proposal, the Aquifer proposal, is it's got all kinds of incubators and it's got a lot of things that are testing new ways of helping people get, kind of trained up and on the curve. And I think, that's where some of your innovation comes from. You think about, and you look at how people go to school somewhere, and then they, you know, start coding, and then the next thing you know, they're the next big developer, and they're one of the Silicon Valley unicorns. That's, you know, you got to get them started. And I think that's, you know, Midtown's got the assets that are required to get them started.
I'm going to jump to a similar sort of question, and this may be the last grouping of questions, but it's about Greer Garson Studios and the theaters there. But basically the grouping is I'll just do it all at one time, and so you can sort of tell the story. But will Greer Garson Theater be open again to Santa Fe people? Will people be able to see movies there? Will the studios be reused and or expanded? And what is generally the film strategy for the Garson Studio area?
So Justin,
sure, and
Dana,
Dana as well. I guess I'll take Dana. I'll take the film, the present Garson Studios as it is right now, and then if Dana, you step in and talk about the development aspect of things. The studios right now are being used for professional productions that are in there. I believe Netflix is in there right now, and there are other options coming forward. The film school and the training program is going to be in the same building, which has got a tradition of doing that. Even when it was the college and Santa Fe University, there were professional productions in there while educational program and training programs were ongoing. And we're going to continue that. It hasn't happened the last couple of years, but we're in the process of organizing it so that the educational and training component can go back into that building. As you know, Daniel and Rich, because you're part of that process as well. And then at that point, the industry is in such a place where the need for more sound stages is very prevalent. And at that point, I will hand over to, and I'll say about the CCA is running the movie theater, the one-screen movie theater there. I see absolutely no reason. In fact, I say that there will continue to be movies programmed there for the public to come and see, feature films there. So at that point, I'll hand it over to Dana of Pacifica Ventures, Dana Arnold, who can talk about the development of the new studios.
Thanks, Justin. I think our goal is pretty simple. We have a very successful opportunity here at the Garson stages are already fully operational with professionals filming excellent professional product. What we need to do is expand upon that and keep the educational component fully alive, which we will do with UNM and the other colleges and the high schools in the area, which we did similarly at Albuquerque Studios. I think the key here is adding those stages in an effective way so that production continues seamlessly. We have a plan to extend the number of stages. Hopefully as many as 6 new stages would be added. And that would include additional resources for visual effects companies, post-production, and other additional businesses that can now be rooted on the site and become productive. So that plan also has to be developed in coordination with the rest of the site so that it fits seamlessly, and the issues of traffic, people access, public access. We don't want the studio to be an open part of the community and not a fenced off facility. So it's going to be very much tied into the educational process with UNM and others in the community. And I think it's going to be a very vibrant facility. The industry is growing dramatically. There's a tremendous amount of new production being done, and I think Santa Fe will enjoy the opportunity to see more films produced there and significant amount of job growth. That's the one thing we brought to Albuquerque was significant job growth in this sector. And over the 15 years we were there, created tens of thousands of jobs. And we would hope to be able to do the same in Santa Fe.
Great, thank you.
Oh, and Daniel,
yeah.
Our next Meet the Developer session is going to be focused on film education. I had been thinking about art, but I think we also ought to add economic development in there because they're so tied together. And so I think that people that are interested in how that all works might just put a note on your calendar that in a couple of weeks we're going to organize a session where we'll be more focused on that topic. Okay. And hopefully be able to go into more detail if people are interested or get some thoughts on it if they've got them.
Great. Well, We have 10 more minutes. I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and I think the reason I wanted to ask these maybe at the very end was they sort of take us back to the beginning again about collaboration and the intention of the solicitation, the RFEI, to facilitate collaborations. The question is, are you open to accepting additional partners to fulfill the goal around cultural, creating a cultural and district that represents the history and culture of Santa Fe?
Yes. Yes, we are. And we've been, working within, we're trying to be very respectful of the procurement process, but working within the process, we've talked with quite a few folks that were part of other teams and are trying to find a way to expand. I just think the conversation that Tim and Becky had about the library, we've had the schools on our radar. We've known that you need to pull that, just keep pulling on that and stretching it out and further into the community and further into the community. But, part of this is logistics. We had to get a presentation together. We had to go through the process. At some point we had to stop. Well, now it's time to start again. And we're very open. We're very excited about some of the calls we get and really looking forward to being able to announce some collaborators that might have been a part of another team. Some of them have got some really good ideas and could bring some really good skill sets to our team.
Great, that's exciting to hear. And then the last question is, because I think there's lots of people listening tonight, but I think people just want to know that there's opportunities for jobs on the site, whether it's a professional job and or others. And that Santa Fe residents will be a focus for jobs as you move forward.
They definitely will. I have a story. We in 2000 and I guess it was 9, we started a large infrastructure development project. It had been the site of a public housing property that needed to be demolished and replaced. And sort of depths of the financial crisis, we had a big job that was getting ready to kick off. And we worked with our contractor, we worked with our local community, put the word out, held a job fair.
Uh-oh, did we lose him?
Yeah, we might have.
Yep, we have, unfortunately.
Really didn't have another option. And I feel like Bill and I talked a lot about this, and I feel like we've both got a kind of deep-seated commitment to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure the local community gets a shot at the good jobs that come out of these things, because that's really why, that's really part of why that's why a city would support a master development, is to push the good things into that community. You don't want to have people parachuting in.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys for your thoughtful answers, and they come from depths of experience, and so I really appreciate that. Then.
So Daniel, Hal was raising his hand. He may. Do you have something to add?
Yeah. Sorry.
I just wanted to mention in our specialty, in expanding the studio, and we'll be expanding it substantially. We will be creating literally thousands of jobs. And the good thing about these jobs, they're high-paying jobs. And I'm not talking about actors and developers. I'm talking about the people that make the things happen. Everything from security to painters, to carpenters, to electricians, to welders. And that's why it's important that we tie in very, very strongly to the educational component, so that these jobs remain local. And that's what the opportunity will be. And from the standpoint of who the customers of the studio are and will be, the last thing they want to do is have to import these people because of the large expense it is. So to have a trained local workforce will do nothing more than continue to expand that many more job opportunities, because the people from Hollywood, that's what they want.
Thanks, Hal.
Thank you. Actually, that's a really great way to possibly end this. I mean, I think that we can all walk away from job creation, job creation and housing production as core elements of the future of Midtown Santa Fe, while looking at the arts and culture to create it as a fun and exciting place to be. So there's a lot of work ahead for you guys. And we're gonna hold your feet to the fire to do great stuff with us. So it's very exciting to hear your initial thoughts, and truly, it's great. I appreciate all the time you've spent so far. So I just want to tell everyone who's listening in, and we'll post it on the website, on the city's website, that in 2 weeks, we're planning in 2 weeks from now to have a subsequent Meet the Developer. It will be topic specific, and it sounds like James is thinking about it's going to be on the links between education and job creation. So we'll develop that. Please start sending in your questions, and that'll help them focus even that much more the kinds of things they want to talk about on that 2 Tuesdays from now. To submit questions, you can submit them at this email address. And again, this is on the city's website as well. And there's also a website, but the email address is info@midtowndistrictsantafe.com. I'll say it again, info@midtowndistrictsantafe.com. And you can submit questions there. And you can go to the midtowndistrictsantafe.com website to get continual updates. The city's website also has responses to frequently asked questions. As most of you probably noticed, we did not answer city-related questions. We are going to provide responses to those on the city's website on a regular basis. And they will be frequently asked questions because we're getting a lot of them, and we're trying to package them so that people don't spend their whole lives going through each individual question, but are able to see responses to some of the frequently asked ones. So I'm gonna wrap it up there. And again, thank you so much to Team Midtown Santa Fe for all of your time and thoughts and energy you're putting into this. And thank you so much to the citizens and participants and people of Santa Fe who spent their evening also asking these questions and listening in. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sam.